Okay, in front of us right now we have our Redarc dual battery kit to suit the GU Patrol. And behind us you'll see we've got a 3 litre GU Patrol. Now this kit's designed to fit all the way from Series 4 through to Series 9. So that's 2005 through to 2016 in both the 4.2 and the 3 litre diesel variants of the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and install this into this vehicle, show you how you can get this kit into your GU Patrol. So this is what's included in the kit. Today we're fitting the 1225 Redarc charger. Now it's a solar controller, a DC-DC charger and an isolator all in one. And the kit, we've got the laser cut stainless steel bracket to mount it, vehicle specific for the GU Patrol. We've got spare fuses and all the bolts and nuts required for this installation, including the instructions for the Redarc charger and also for the mounting of the bracket. All these fittings as well for the mounting of the bracket. So let's just run through the harness so you get a bit of an idea of what we're achieving here. So if I unravel this harness, everything's labelled. So let's firstly isolate our main battery harness. So this one's designed to run to the main vehicle battery, which is over on the driver's side in this particular vehicle, our blue Century battery there. So this harness runs over there. Our next harness runs up to the auxiliary battery. You see that's this harness here, labelled auxiliary battery. So that's going to run up into our auxiliary battery. And then our Anderson is part of the harness. That's to accept solar directly, unregulated solar directly into this port. Now this one has a bit of length on it, designed for different options. Some people like it mounted out on a bull bar if you've got a bull bar, maybe in the front grille, or even on this back plate behind the battery where you pop the bonnet, plug your solar in. But you can plug permanent solar into this port and the Redarc becomes the solar reg. Okay, so this is where our Redarc charger is going to mount in the front grille in this area here. So our first step in the installation is to remove this front grille so that we can get access into this area. So the first thing is you'll notice 4 plastic clips, or this one has 3, one's actually missing. And being an older vehicle, we're going to have a few little broken plastic clips, but basically I'm just going to show you how to release these. So what we're doing is with a flat blade screwdriver, we're just tucking under this and popping it up in the air. So you'll see that's popped up. I can now actually pull that clip out. So we're going to go through and do that with all of them. So just screwdriver, release, pop out. And now I'll just quickly go through how to reinsert these. So you'll notice that's popped up now. And when that's in the popped up position, I can easily reinsert it into the hole like that. And then to secure it, I'm simply pushing that tab back in and you'll see that's secured it again. Okay, so we're just going to set those aside for install later. Now that we've freed up the top of the grille, there's 2 mounting points on each end here and 1 in the center. So we'll start by our one in the center. Actually, the center clip in this one is broken, and we're going to find that in a more than 10-year-old vehicle. So normally there is a release clip in here, push down, and that will release that. That's quite simple. These ones on the end are a little bit trickier, so let's have a look at these. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift this grille, and up under here, you're going to see a black square with a flat blade head through it. Okay, so once we've located that, we're going to put our flat blade screwdriver up there and just turn it 90 degrees. Like that. So that's released it, and I'll show you a close-up of this clip once we get the grille off. I'll just do the other side. Okay, so we've released those 3 clips. I'll just set this grille aside and then I'll pull one of these clips out so you can see, might make it easier to understand what we're doing. So these clips will pull out now. So what we're trying to do is turn that 90 degrees. See, they just flex. Probably not even, probably 45 degrees actually. So we're just turning that till its square sides are upright. And that allows the grille to come out of position. And once we've got them out, we can actually insert these into the grille and it's a lot easier to reinsert. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we can simply reinstall these into that cavity, lock them in like that, and that makes it a lot easier to just push the grill in at the end. Okay, step 2, now that we've removed the grill, is actually mounting our Redarc charger. So we're mounting it to this stud here, this hole here, and down to the bottom there. So the first thing we want to do is get our harness behind these cooler units. So sit the harness down in there, slip it over that top bolt, line it up with this bolt and our other hole down in there. So the first thing is our larger nut included in the kit. You'll see our big nylock nut. Just going to sit that over there. That's going to lock that into position. So we'll just leave that finger tight at the moment. Now the next thing we want to do is using these little brackets included in our kit. Now this might be a little bit fiddly, but what we were going to do here is, what we want to achieve is basically threading that up through this big hole in the body here. We're going to thread these up and we want them to come out here, and that's going to be our stud to secure the bracket there. So let's run through doing that. So the first one is our longer bracket actually, so that's going to go to the top bolt, so that's going to thread through the longest, and then we have a shorter one that comes up to this bolt. Let's start with the long one. Now I'm just threading that through that bottom hole. Now I can see it's up there, but it's sitting way back. So what I'm going to do is bend this bracket, and that should force it to come forward. So I can see it there, just got to get it through that hole. Maybe twisting it sideways might help us get into there. I'm just going to try and guide it out of the hole now that it's found its way. So there we go. So we've got our first one sitting through. Using one of the nylock nuts included in the kit, we're going to sit that top bracket onto that stud. Pull that through and just do it up finger tight for now. Okay, so now that we've got that stud through, I'm holding it from the bottom, we're just going to do up the nut finger tight. Like so. Okay, so we'll leave that one in place, and now we'll try and get our bottom bolt in a similar way. So you'll see we've got a slightly shorter one, TB02, the number on that one. So we're going to do the same thing, thread it up through that hole and try and get it to pop out here. Okay, so that one's found its hole. And with the last nut, we're just going to do that up finger tight as well. So there we go, we've found all 3 mounting bolts, so we can go ahead and secure them. Okay, now we can do these nuts up secure. So they're just 10mm bolts. Now as I'm doing those up, I'm lifting the charger up as well. Make sure it's not on these oil hoses here so I can fully get my hand under there. I don't want them to be in any way rubbing. And the third one, just a 13mm. Okay, so there we go. Our Redarc chargers secure into place. Now we can start routing our cables. Okay, we're going to start by feeding our auxiliary battery cable through. So that's the one with the Anderson and Redarc auxiliary on the fuse holder. So in this particular vehicle, we've got a huge gap through here that we can get through. Now this may change if it's got an intercooler or things like that. We might have to find a different route, but we've got plenty of options on this one through here. There's a gap up through here as well, which might be a good spot to go through to help secure our harness. Worst case, we've got holes and grommets in under the headlight that we can go if all of this area is taken up. But in this case, I'm going to start by feeding the auxiliary battery harness straight through this gap and then finding it inside the engine bay. So I've got my positive through. I'm just going to make sure the negative follows after it. There's our negatives. So now I can go ahead and pull that harness all the way through. Now in this particular case, we're also going to mount the solar Anderson inside the engine bay. So I'm going to follow that through. There's our solar Anderson. Okay, so we're gonna mount our solar Anderson down the back on this plate. So I'm just gonna leave that sitting there for now. I'm gonna route our auxiliary up, ready to connect to our auxiliary battery, but we're not gonna make our electrical connections yet. So now that we've routed our auxiliary battery cable harness, it's time to start routing the main battery harness. So in a similar way, we're looking for things to tie to. We're always thinking about things to tie to. For example, here, we've got brackets through here. We've also got an electrical harness. We can secure our harnesses to nice and neatly. It's where Nissan runs the electrical harness, so we can't go wrong there. So same thing here, we're looking for places to tie, and there's an electrical harness under here we can tie to. We could also utilize these brackets. They're nice and sturdy. So I'm gonna route my cable with that in mind. So feeling where the electrical harness goes. At this point, I'm just running it in the same route. I'm not worrying about securing it yet. And then same thing, we're going to find a gap through into the engine bay. And once again, this one's got plenty of room here that we can thread through. We've got holes down under the headlights. There's lots of options in this vehicle. So I'm just going to go through in a similar route to we used on the other side. Starting with my positive, letting that fuse holder find its way through. Okay, so there's our positive. Follow that with the earth. And there we go, I've got my earth through. And I can run that up to connect to the main battery. Okay, so we've got our cables into position. So that's our routing step complete. Now we'll go ahead and make the electrical connections and then we can secure our harness. Okay, now it's time to make our electrical connections to the batteries. And we're going to start with the auxiliary battery. Now this may change depending on the battery that you've selected for your setup. But in this case, we've got some 13mm nuts, washers, and that's designed to go onto these studs here. So we're going to make sure our harness is sitting in the position we want firstly. So I'm planning to cable tie to the existing Nissan harness. So we're going to start by feeding our cable in between the air cleaner and the water filler here. Just make sure it's sitting in the position that we want to be able to secure it later. Once we've done that, you'll notice in the pack there's some cable ties. So we're going to use one of these cable ties to just hold our fuse holder into position. In fact, I'm going to use two of them for that. we'll cut those tags off. Now the first thing we want to do is connect to our positive terminal of the battery. So we can see our positive terminal there, and this is auxiliary battery, red terminal, so it's positive. So we're going to connect onto there using our flat washer first, spring washer, and then our 13mm nut. So we want to do this up securely first, so we can safely tighten this now. Once that one's secure, we can go and install our negative straight onto that stud there, following the same process. So our flat washer, spring washer in this case, and our 13mm nut. And we can secure that tightly as well. So now we've made the electrical connections to the auxiliary battery, we'll move over to the main battery. Okay, so now we want to make the electrical connections on our main battery, now that we've done the auxiliary. So the first thing, using the cable ties, we want to make sure that our harness is sitting where we want it to be, and we're going to secure our fuse holder to the battery hold down. So I'm going to start by doing that. Use a couple cable ties here. Cut those tags off. So now that we've done that, we want to start by connecting our positive terminal, the red one, to the positive terminal of the battery. Now we want to be careful when we do that in this case, because we are dealing with a live terminal here. So we want to make sure that when we swing the socket, we're not going to touch any metal parts, and that would be a short. So very carefully, we want to loosen this 12mm nut off the top. And maybe just hold our fingers on there so that we don't lose any of the existing electrical connections on that battery. And then we're going to swing our positive terminal around and connect it to there. And secure that, still being just as careful as before. Okay, so now that that's secure, and now that we've finished with our positive, we can safely work on our negative. So this one's a 10mm bolt. I'm going to release this 10mm. Now even this is a 6mm bolt on this 10mm head. In the kit we have supplied it with 8mm, which is pretty standard like this on a battery terminal. We've done that mainly because over the years often a battery terminal will break, and this is probably a more common connection. It will still work on the 6mm, but this has actually still got the existing Nissan battery terminal with a 6mm stud. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this bolt completely and put our terminal on the inner side. It's going to give it a good connection to the battery terminal. Thread that back through and put his nut back on. And now I can do this terminal up tight. Okay, so that's the electrical connections all made. It's now time to go and secure our harness and neaten it all up. So let's use the remaining cable ties to do just that. So let's start by securing back from the battery. So get the length that we require in this area, and I'm going to start by putting a cable tie around the Nissan harness here. And just making sure that I'm only going around the electrical harness. I don't want to put that aircon line in with it as well. Make sure I go around our harness. So there's our first securing point. Same thing here, just making sure we're just going around our harness and the Nissan harness. And we can come back through later and cut all of these tags off. So we're just going to follow this process all the way back to the Redarc charger. So I'm looking for the Nissan harness up under here. Okay, so we're just continuing to follow that Nissan harness. So if we feed our cable tie up over, it'll naturally follow over the harness. It's a bit tight to reach in here, but once we're around both our harness and the Nissan harness, secure that cable tie. Get one more up here. Like so, and then we can start to secure both our harnesses together up against the charger bracket. We just want to make sure that where the harnesses split and come out the charger, that we're not up against any of our oil lines or our radiator or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is put a cable tie through the Redarc bracket here, around our two harnesses. And this may vary a little bit depending on what you've got installed in the front here. But we're just looking to make sure that it can't rub on anything basically. Holding those into a position that looks like it's gonna not rub. Can hold that cable tie on. Now we can follow our auxiliary battery harness. It goes through into the engine bay here and secure that up with the remaining cable ties. So we've still got another Nissan harness that we can tie to. We've got our auxiliary battery and our solar cable here. So last cable tie to go around both of them in this case. And then I'm going to use a few more on our solar Anderson cable. And our auxiliary cable's looking pretty good. I might just put one more around this steel bracket, the water bottle mount. Okay, so now that we've secured all the harness, we can go and cut our cable tie ends off, neaten up the harness, and push our cable ties out of the way. Once we've done that and we're happy with how the harness sits and looks, the next step will be to test our Redarc unit. So we'll run through how to test it on solar, vehicle and isolation. So let's just cut off our cable ties. Okay, so the install's complete. Let's go about testing our system now. So the first thing we want to see once we've connected power to the system is that the A light is flashing lightly in the background there. In this case, we're in A profile. Once we know that that's happening, we know we've got power to the unit. I'm going to go and start the car now, and we're going to want to see the vehicle light come on and then the stage light come on. So the stage light will either come on solid or flashing, and that just depends on what stage of charge the charger's in. So I'll just go start the car now. Now, a short time after we start the vehicle, usually about 30 seconds, we can see it's happened now. We've got our vehicle light and our stage lights on solid. So that means our charger is cranking in its full 25 amps. It's in bulk stage. So there we go, we've tested the vehicle charging. Now we want to test that it goes into isolation mode. So I'll just turn the car off. Now, after the car's been turned off, and I've turned the headlights on just to speed up this process because it doesn't always happen instantly. But once that battery voltage on the main battery drops back to 12.6, the charger will go into isolation mode. And isolation mode is what we saw initially. So we should see these lights go off again and just our A light flashing lightly in the background. Once that's achieved, we've then tested the BCDC charger and we've tested the isolation mode. The next thing we want to test is the solar. Okay, so we've seen it's gone back into isolation mode. So now the next thing we want to test is the solar. So I've got a solar blanket sitting out in the sun there. I'm going to go and plug that solar blanket in, and we're going to see the solar light come on and the stage light as well. So remember, this is unregulated solar, straight into that solar Anderson plug. Plug that in now. And you can see we've got our solar light, our stage light, and our A light is on. So we're charging via solar right now. So we've tested every part of the system now. Okay, so the last thing, now that we've fully installed our system and we've tested it, is to reinstall our front grille. So we mentioned earlier about pre-inserting our plastic clips. So having those in place, it just makes it so much easier to reinstall the grille. Okay, so what we're going to do is line up these two clips with our holes. So one on each headlight mount. So let's place our grille in, line up those holes. Once I can see that they're both sitting into place, I'm just going to give it a little nudge. So that's in. And we can pull against it and just make sure we have locked it into position. So those bottom feet are locked in. Then we can go and insert our top clips. So remember, we want to make sure that they're up in the air to reinsert. We push them through the hole. And once they are in the hole, we're going to push that back down flush and that locks it in. So let's go and install these. Okay, now that we've reinstalled the grille, the system's fully installed and we've tested it, it's time to start touring with this vehicle.